Dear friends, today we will talk about a topic that affects each of us: how to take care of ourselves when we lose loved ones. Many of you are currently going through a period of grief or have recently experienced a loss. It is important to know you are not alone on this journey. Every day, in letters and comments, you share your stories of loss, whether it is the passing of a beloved spouse after 50 years of life together, the loss of a child, or saying goodbye to a close friend. Your pain resonates in the hearts of many people because each of us has gone through similar trials. And today, we will talk about what has helped many people not to forget themselves during a time of deep grief. We often hear the phrase, "You need to take care of yourself," and it may seem almost offensive at a time when your heart is breaking with sorrow. How can you think about yourself when it feels like the whole world has stopped? When every morning begins with the realization of loss, and every evening ends with tears on the pillow? It is important to understand that self-care during grief is not selfishness. It is not a betrayal of the memory of the person who has passed. It is a necessity, as essential as breathing. Recently, our viewer Sarah shared her story. After her husband passed away, she completely immersed herself in grief, stopped eating, and barely slept. Her children were in despair, seeing their mother fading away. And you know what she said? "Only when I started taking care of myself was I able to truly honor John's memory. After all, he always wanted to see me strong and happy." These words open up a new understanding of what it means to grieve. Today, we will talk about simple, practical steps that can help you navigate through grief without losing yourself. There is no magic pill for pain. Such a thing does not exist. But there are beacons that can help you not to get lost in the darkness of sorrow. And remember, each of us goes through this journey in our own way, at our own pace. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. There is only your path, and we are here to support you on it. Many of us, when going through the loss of a loved one, forget a simple truth. We cannot help others or preserve the bright memory of those who have passed if we do not take care of our own well-being. Why does this happen? Often, it is connected to guilt. It seems wrong to think about ourselves when our hearts are overwhelmed with grief, as if every minute spent on ourselves is a minute stolen from the memory of the loved one. In our experience, we often encounter people who live on autopilot for months. They stop taking care of their health, skip meals, and do not go for walks. Bill, one of our regular viewers, shared how, after his wife passed away, he lived on coffee and sandwiches for 2 weeks until his daughter sounded the alarm. "I just couldn't bring myself to cook. Every time I walked into the kitchen, everything reminded me of Mary. How she made her signature apple pie, how we had breakfast together." Neglecting self-care during grief can lead to serious consequences. The body is already under stress, and if we do not support its basic needs, it can result in health problems. Insomnia, loss of appetite, headaches, and worsening of chronic conditions. These are all common issues for those who forget about self-care during mourning, but it is not just about physical health. When we do not take care of ourselves, our ability to process grief in a healthy way also suffers. A depleted body and an exhausted mind cannot cope with the emotional burden of loss. It is like trying to run a marathon without preparation and nourishment. Such a race could end very badly. It is important to remember that self-care is not a luxury or a sign of weakness. It is the foundation on which our recovery after loss is built. It is a way to honor the memory of those who have passed by, continuing to live a full life, as they would have wanted. After all, deep down, we know that our loved ones would not want to see us neglecting ourselves in an attempt to cope with the pain of their absence. In the next few minutes, we will look at simple yet effective ways to support yourself during a difficult time. These steps can be taken by anyone, regardless of age or circumstances. Let's start with the most important, the basic needs of our body. During grief, these are the first to suffer, even though they require minimal effort to maintain. The most essential are sleep, nutrition, and movement. It seems simple, but wisdom lies in simplicity. Let's begin with sleep. We often hear from our viewers that nights become the hardest time of the day. Silence and loneliness intensify the feeling of loss. Insomnia becomes a constant companion, but there are simple steps that can help regulate sleep. Our viewer Martha shared her experience. She created an evening ritual that includes a warm bath and reading her favorite book. Maybe I can't fall asleep right away, but at least my body is resting, she says. As for nutrition, the main rule here is to eat small portions, but regularly. You do not need to force yourself to cook complex meals. Start with something simple, maybe a banana for breakfast or a bowl of soup for lunch. James, who lost his wife a year ago, shared how he began simply by setting an alarm for mealtimes. I didn't always want to eat, but the alarm reminded me to at least drink some water or eat an apple. Movement is another important element of self-care. This is not about intense physical exercise. A short walk around the block or a few simple exercises at home is enough. Alice, who is 72 years old, started with 5-minute walks to the mailbox. At first I thought it was pointless, but gradually these walks became moments when I could be alone with my thoughts and breathe in some fresh air. It is important to remember, do not demand too much of yourself at once. Start with one small change. Maybe it's a glass of water in the morning or 10 minutes in the fresh air. Gradually, these small actions will become a habit, creating a foundation for more significant steps toward recovery. And remember, if one day is particularly difficult and you cannot bring yourself to follow even these simple rules, that's okay. Tomorrow is a new day, and you can start again. When we talk about emotional support during grief, it is important to remember, all the feelings we experience are absolutely normal. Sadness, anger, emptiness, even temporary relief. These are all natural reactions to loss. There is no need to be ashamed of your emotions or try to suppress them. Many of our viewers share that the most unexpected thing for them was the variety of emotions they experienced. Patricia, who lost her sister, shared, "One day I found myself laughing at an old photo, and a minute later, I was crying. I thought I was losing my mind until I learned that this is a normal reaction to grief." One of the most effective ways to cope with emotional stress is through support groups. In every city, there are groups where people gather who have experienced similar losses. Robert, who has been attending a support group for 6 months, says, "When I first came there, I could barely speak. But gradually, listening to the stories of others, I realized I am not alone in my pain. That gave me strength." Sometimes we hear concerns from our viewers. Will a support group intensify their suffering? Won't it be even more painful to listen to other people's stories of loss? Experience shows the opposite. Shared pain becomes lighter. Moreover, in support groups, one can learn new ways to cope with grief and hear how others navigate similar challenges. There are moments when the help of a professional counselor or psychologist is necessary. This is not a sign of weakness. On the contrary, it is a sign of wisdom and self-care. It is especially important to seek a specialist if you notice that grief is interfering with your daily life, if thoughts of hopelessness arise, or if you feel stuck in your sorrow. Susan, one of our regular viewers, shared, "I resisted the idea of seeing a psychologist for a long time. I felt that I had to handle it on my own. But when I finally made the decision, I realized professional help provides tools that help you move forward while preserving the cherished memory of your loved one." When talking about daily self-care practices, it is important to understand that it is not about making drastic changes, but rather about small, simple actions that can be incorporated into your day. These small rituals often become anchors, helping you stay afloat in the sea of grief. 5-minute practices can be the beginning of a long healing journey. Our viewer, Dorothy, created her own morning ritual. She sits in her husband's favorite chair with a cup of coffee and spends a few minutes simply watching the sunrise. At first, it was painful to sit in his chair, but over time these minutes became a moment of closeness, a way to feel his presence in my life. Simple meditation does not require special skills or extended time. It is enough to find a quiet place and spend a few minutes simply breathing. Frank, who lost his daughter, shared how he began practicing moments of silence in his car before work. "I just sit, breathe, and allow myself to feel whatever I feel. Sometimes it's tears, sometimes it's a smile from a bright memory." Short walks are another way to take care of yourself. They not only provide physical activity, but also help clear the mind. Many find comfort in observing nature, how the seasons change, how flowers grow, how birds sing. It reminds us of life's continuous renewal. Some create their own unique ways of self-support. Barbara started a gratitude journal, where every evening she writes down one good thing that happened during the day. Even on the darkest days, there is something to be grateful for. Maybe a friend's phone call or an especially delicious cup of tea. It is important to remember that these practices should not become another source of stress. If a particular day is especially difficult and you cannot bring yourself to follow your usual routine, that's okay. Be kind to yourself. Sometimes the greatest act of self-care is simply allowing yourself to be, without demanding immediate actions or changes. These small rituals gradually create a new structure for life, helping to find grounding in the present while maintaining a connection with the past. One of the most challenging aspects of experiencing loss is communication with those around us. Many people withdraw into their grief, refusing support from loved ones. Others, on the contrary, fear being alone. It is important to find a healthy balance between solitude and social interaction. Accepting help from others is an art that many have to learn anew. We often hear from viewers, "I don't want to be a burden," or "Others are struggling too, I don't want to bother them." But allowing others to help is also an act of care, both for yourself and for them. When we accept help, we give others the opportunity to feel needed and useful. Tom, who recently lost his wife, shared his experience. "I used to refuse invitations to family dinners. I thought I would ruin everyone's mood with my sadness, but my grandchildren insisted on weekly video calls. Now these conversations are the highlights of my week, even if I just listen to their stories about school or watch my youngest grandchild's new tooth grow." It is important to remember that social support can take different forms. It does not necessarily have to be long conversations or frequent meetings. Sometimes a short message, a phone call, or a walk together is enough. Mary shared how her neighbor simply leaves fresh-baked goods at her door every Sunday. This simple gesture reminds me that I am not alone. Equally important is learning to respect your need for solitude. There are days when you need to be alone with your thoughts and feelings. It is okay to decline an invitation or postpone a call if you feel you do not have the energy for interaction. The key is not to let solitude turn into isolation. Some people find comfort in new forms of social interaction. Jane started attending a book club. "I like that we discuss books and not my loss. It helps me feel like a regular person, not just a widow." Others join interest groups, volunteer organizations, or community centers. Remember that rebuilding social connections after a loss is a process that takes time and patience. Some relationships may change, new connections will form, and that is natural. The spiritual aspect of experiencing loss plays a special role in the healing process. Whether you are connected to a particular religion or simply searching for meaning in what has happened, spiritual support can be an important part of the journey through grief. For many, faith becomes a source of comfort. Our viewer Grace shared how daily prayer helped her cope with the loss of her husband. "Even on the hardest days, I found peace in a quiet conversation with God. It gave me the feeling that I was not alone in my grief." At the same time, it is important to remember that each person's spiritual path is unique, and there is no single correct way to seek comfort. Many people find deep meaning in creating new traditions that honor the memory of their loved ones. Michael, who lost his sister, plants a new tree in his garden every year on her birthday. Now, this garden is a living reminder of her. "When her favorite roses bloom, I feel her presence," he shares. The search for meaning in loss is a natural human need. Some find it in helping others. Ruth, who experienced the loss of her son, became a volunteer at a local hospice. "By helping others, I feel that the pain of my loss gains some meaning. I can use my experience to support those who are going through similar trials." It is important to remember that the spiritual journey does not necessarily have to be connected to religion. For some, it may be meditation or yoga. For others, walks in nature or creative activities. Anne found comfort in painting. "When I paint, I feel connected to something greater than myself. It helps me accept what I cannot change." Creating a memorial space can also be an important part of spiritual healing. It could be a corner in the home with photographs and keepsakes, or a special place in a park where one can sit and remember a loved one. John created a small memorial garden. "This is a place where I can talk to my wife, tell her about my day. Sometimes it feels like she answers me through the rustling of the leaves." The spiritual aspect helps us accept that some questions will remain unanswered and find peace in that acceptance. It allows us to maintain a connection with those who have passed while continuing to move forward in our own lives. As we conclude our discussion, we want to remind you grief is never a straight or predictable path. It is a road with many twists and turns, where each step matters, even if it seems small and insignificant. Remember, during this difficult period, it is especially important to be patient and kind to yourself. Every story our viewers have shared shows that healing is possible, even though it does not mean completely eliminating the pain of loss. Recovery often happens unnoticed, just as spring arrives after a long winter, gradually, day by day. You may not notice the changes until one day you catch yourself smiling for the first time in a long time while remembering a loved one. Remember the words of Eleanor, who lost her daughter 2 years ago? I learned to live not despite the loss, but alongside it. My love for my daughter became a part of me, making me stronger. These words reflect deep wisdom. We are not required to let go or forget. We learn to carry the memory of our loved ones in our hearts while continuing to live a full life. It is important to remember that there are no time limits for grief. Do not let anyone tell you that you should be over it by now, or it's time to stop being sad. Each person walks this path at their own pace, and it is completely normal to have good days and bad days, even long after the loss. We hope that the advice and stories we have shared today will be a source of support and comfort for you. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. There are always people around you who are ready to listen and support you, whether they are loved ones, support groups, or professional counselors. And most importantly, be kind to yourself. Allow yourself to feel everything you are feeling. Allow yourself to seek help when you need it. Allow yourself to take small steps toward healing. Each of these steps is an expression of love, not only for yourself, but also for the memory of those we have lost. We are always here for you, ready to listen to your stories and support you on this journey. Take care of yourself and remember, after the darkest night, the dawn always comes. And finally, we want to thank you for being with us today. Your attention and engagement in the comments help us create content that truly supports people during difficult times in their lives. If you found this video helpful, subscribe to our channel. We regularly discuss important topics that affect each of us. Click the notification bell so you don't miss new episodes. Together, we are creating a space of support and understanding for everyone who needs it. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Until next time.